I ended up creating this website kind of as a fun project and a goal to be able to share my experiences and think beyond just the actual hunt itself. For me, bringing home feathers, fly tying for fishing, or making bow ties for a fancy outfit going to dinner, any way I can bring hunting into my everyday life, I'm going to do it. There's a lot of mixed emotions when you get out in the field and there's the game in front of you and you've taken that shot. You've just taken a life to sustain your own life. It doesn't have to be, a steak and potatoes. It doesn't have to be a jalapeno popper wrapped in bacon. It can be different, and different can be good and tasty. And wild game can be amazing if it's treated right.
Hey everybody, it's Brandon with Wilderness Attitude Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate it. We're back from the Western Hunt and Conservation Expo and got home just in the nick of time. We got about 8 inches of snow outside, and it has definitely turned into a little winter wonderland here, which, being the 12th day of February, it's about time because we haven't had any real precipitation until now. But the podcast guest I have today is a gentleman, a young man who has an incredible passion and a desire to share his recipes, his wild game projects, and to get others thinking about what happens beyond the hunt. And he has created a website called Pusuit. Anyway, without wasting too much time, let's dive right into Reed Schoedl. You're going to get a kick out of this guy. Reading his bio and going through some of his stuff. He has a clear definition as to why he hunts, the experiences of why he hunts, and how he thinks beyond the meat. And so without further ado, Reed, thanks for coming on the podcast with us.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, man. This is you got a plethora of information going. We talked a little bit, and last week you put together your website, and I mean, you're kind of officially launching, are you not?
I am. Yeah, I'm trying. So I'm pushing forward.
Well, tell us about Pusuit. We can get there, postpursuit.com. And,
that's it.
And the stuff you got going on there looks pretty intriguing. You've got wild game projects and recipes, and the whole idea for you is to teach people, from what I can gather, everything they can do with the whole animal. I mean, this is kind of based on how the Indians and how everybody used to use every piece of the animal that they harvested, right?
Absolutely. And so I ended up creating this website just kind of as a fun project and a goal to be able to share my experiences and different things that I've come across just to further use my harvest and think beyond just the actual hunt itself. The hunt is great and I absolutely love it. And it's part of my passion for it is just being able to get out in nature, have a good hunt. And even if I don't bring any meat home, I'm happy to be out there. The shot is such a small part of it for me that it's incredible. I enjoy it. There's a lot of mixed emotions in there. It's really raw. But after the shot to me matters just as much. I'm not going to go home with a turkey or with a duck and just do a quick breast out. I'm going to want to use more. I'm going to want to think beyond that. And it's been a passion of mine, especially for the last year or so, just to try and come up with different ways of using my harvest that is out of the norm. And I know there's a lot of people out there, at least I think there is, that want to use their meat and want to use more of what they bring home and not leave as much in the field. So for me, bringing home feathers, fly tying for fishing, or, making bow ties for, a fancy outfit going to dinner, any way I can bring hunting into my everyday life, in the city living that I do, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to try and find a way to do it.
That's awesome. I mean, it's a big movement, right, these days right now, with people making that conscious decision to kill for their food. And in this modern world, it's very easy to go to the store, grab some meat, grab some carrots, right, and do your thing. But you want to partake in the process actively, right? Be in the moment of that, harvest for yourself, and and tell us what kind of bond that brings to you through the beginning to the end of that, from harvesting for yourself to finishing these projects on the, one, for instance, one being the meat on the plate. But, I mean, I even saw that bow tie you made out of the duck feathers, right? I think that's what you're getting to when you made that comment. Dude, that is super cool. But take me back to the strong bond of what it brings to you.
For me, a big part of hunting is getting out in nature, being close to God, being close to the primitive side of life. You're able to find yourself, I think, in nature a lot easier than you do when you're in the city. The hustle bustle, I think you can forget who you are. And you get wrapped up in a lot of the little things in life that overall aren't as important. And so for me, being able to go out in the field and hunt and get back to the basics is such a huge part of a driving force for me to be able to find myself and feel comfortable with myself. I'm not usually the outspoken, boisterous type, and I keep to myself for the most part. But when it comes to the hunting world, I can make an exception, and I feel like I can grow into that, and it's something that I have a passion for, and it brings out more of who I am by me being able to get out in nature again. So,
right. It's definitely obvious that you have a respect for the outdoors and, the animals and the plants and the things that have, that have been put here for us, right? I mean, when you take an animal's life, explain to us how that feels emotionally for you when you do that.
So there's a lot of mixed emotions that I feel when I go out and I hunt. Being able to get out there, you've planned for, weeks, beforehand just to get yourself, situated with an opportunity to be able to even harvest something. And so to work as hard as you do for planning your trip, you're going on Google Maps, trying to look up, what's your strategy this time? What's the weather going to be like? And then you get out there and realize everything's different. The terrain is totally different than you thought it was. Animals are moving a different way than you thought they were. So I get out there, and it's a certain level of pride that you feel that you get to be working with yourself and with your buddies. Hopefully, if you're out there with friends or other hunting partners, right? You get this bond between friends. You end up essentially becoming brothers out in the field. I've got two buddies that I hunt with a lot, and we just consider ourselves brothers at this point. We're always texting. And it's just one of those things that we're all passionate about it. And to be able to get out there and hunt, not even for necessarily the harvest, but just to be able to get out there is a great feeling. So when it comes to the actual harvest portion of it for me, there's a lot of mixed emotions when you get out in the field, and there's the game in front of you and you've taken that shot. Biggest thing for me is just the awe factor that you've just taken a life to sustain your own life. And that's something that carries a lot of weight to me. I don't particularly like the idea of just going to the store and picking up meat. You don't know anything about it. You don't know the life it lived. You don't know who handled it. And for me to be able to go out in the field, find this animal that was meant for me, that God put on this planet for me, and be able to harvest it myself, do all the work, bringing it home, cutting the meat up, bringing every piece into, that size I want for my family to be able to feed, or I'm going to, keep a whole ham for, guests to enjoy. It's all a thought process, and I enjoy being able to think of that as I do the work, as opposed to just going to the store and picking something up.
Right. I mean, this is a change in dynamic for you in a sense, right? Because let's consider the fact that, when you were growing up, you mentioned to me that it was hunting in California is kind of hush hush, right?
Right, absolutely. Down in, I'm in Southern California, so specifically down here, when I was a kid, I was told, we don't really talk about hunting. You don't talk about firearms. Um, Obviously the kids aren't really going to care, but the adults will. The teachers that are there, they don't want to hear that, somebody's been out and a kid's been handling a gun or, is going out hunting. The idea of hunting to some people down here, they didn't even know you can still do it in California.
That's bizarre, right?
Absolutely.
So out of touch in a sense.
For sure. And that's something that's, it's hard to wrap my mind around, because as a kid, growing up, that was the lifestyle. It was just like, okay, I've got my family, my dad that hunted, and, he had his, hunting buddies, and, we would go out together and do that. But it wasn't until I was older that I kind of got to, step out and realize that, okay, this is Southern California's view, not, everybody's view that hunting should be hush hush.
Right. And so maybe after being somewhat suppressed for so long, this is an amazing opportunity and avenue for you to share all this wealth of knowledge that you've collected over the years in being a hunter and being raised by a dad who hunted and being raised by a mom who took pride in cooking, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is something that, I've always enjoyed doing. And even when I, got into college and was away, from my parents, I started dabbling in cooking then, even more so since I was out of the house. Mom wasn't cooking the meals for me anymore. I was bringing home meat that I had to prepare myself. And she gave me, tips and recipes and ways to kind of go about it myself. But a lot of it was just, experimentation on a college salary, which is, in the negative.
Yeah.
So
that's hard trial and error,
Absolutely.
Because, it's like you say, on a college salary, that's tough. So, I mean, you really got to go out there and figure out how to make the meat that you've harvested taste really good without a lot of fancy ingredients, right?
Absolutely. And I know one of the things that I had cooked way back when, the first duck that I made, tasted awful. I just assumed that's how duck tasted. So I had no interest in, really going out there and doing that, because I'm of the mindset, if you're gonna harvest it, you're gonna eat it. And so for me, with the first ducks that I would taste, they were overcooked, and I'm treating it like a chicken. And it's like, you don't treat it like a chicken, you treat it like beef,
Yeah,
so every time it was just very livery, just iron, so that was definitely a tough experience to go through.
Well, but that's the best way to learn. The best way to learn is to be doing that yourself and figuring that out. I mean, I did the same stuff as a chef for 15 years. I one prime example, I tried to make couscous one time. I wanted to make this orange achiote couscous, and I had it dead set in my mind that that's what I had to have on my plate for the special that night. And I think I made couscous 6 times, and I threw every other batch away because it tasted horrible. So I mean, and I was so I was lucky, right? I mean, I'm a chef in the kitchen with tons of resources to utilize. And even then, I'm still, I'm still having to work through the process of making sure that I can get this all done and get it done right. And so it's, that's the fun though. That's the fun.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, cooking's fun. And cooking's from the heart. And eventually you get to the point where you cook like my wife, where you don't measure nothing, right? You just pour it in your hand. You're like, that's enough.
Right.
That's right. Like when when your great grandma used to write recipe cards, and it was, a small palm full, or
absolutely,
a pinch, or things like that. And it's like, well, my pinch versus someone else's pinch, and my palm full is different than someone else's palm full.
A lot of the recipes that my mom had would be along those lines, where it's like, hey, it was some. And it's like, okay, how much is a some? I don't know what that means yet. And I remember when I first got married, I was at home. My wife was in med school at the time, and so I was the cook while she was very meticulously studying away. So for me, it was a lot of, okay, what do we have in the kitchen? Try to work with what I got. And I remember a lot of the time I was thinking back then, I want to be able to cook without looking at a recipe book, without trying to
Mm-hmm.
look something up, especially since I'm working with a lot of ingredients that aren't going to be necessarily in a recipe book. I'm not going to be able to type in, these are what I have. What can I make? So it was a lot of trial and error and, hoping that it would turn out, and some dishes
Right.
that didn't, and you just don't go back to those.
Well, and writing down all that stuff, as you go, cataloging what you're doing and all that takes a lot of time. Um, and I know when I was writing some of my first recipe Bibles, it took quite a long time to build up a 3-ring binder full of recipes. Years, years and years. But now I can look back on some of that, and it's the same. I'm kind of at that point too, where I'm like, I use these for my family, but I don't really share them with anybody.
Sure.
And but looking at your website and knowing your journey, which we'll talk to listeners a little bit more about your journey to this point. But it feels good to share, right? And it feels good to open people's eyes to things that they may have never thought about. And the post Pusuit, as I look through it between with the recipes, I mean, people are putting their eyes on something for the first time, right? The visual appealing part of it is part of it, but the cooking and the ingredients and all that, and the smells have to be there. But you giving these recipes and giving these ideas and showing people what they can do with this whole animal really enlightened my eyes to the fact that I don't utilize enough of the whole animal.
I think everybody feels that way, and that's that was something for me. Looking at it, I wanted to be able to help people think beyond what they normally do. I have a lot of people that I know that would go out and they're strictly deer hunters, and they'll go and they take the meat off, and they always have the back straps are always steaks, and everything else is turned into jerky, and they'll just do it that way. And it's like, that's fine, it tastes good,
Mm-hmm.
but I like to have variety, and I like to be able to, think of more things that, have a different flavor, have a different profile, and you don't treat it, like beef. You treat it differently. It's not the same animal, and you want to be able to bring out flavors that you don't normally taste. And that's kind of the idea here. Is I'm trying to share what experiences I have, and in the same respect, I'm always looking at other people's wild game food that they put on the plate, and pulling ideas out of it for myself, and just go, hey, it doesn't have to be a steak and potatoes, which is great. It doesn't have to be a jalapeno popper wrapped in bacon.
Right.
It can be different, and different can be good and tasty, and wild game can be amazing if it's treated right. Like I said with the duck, I think a lot of people struggle with the idea that they think of it, treating it like chicken, and it doesn't turn out that way when you overcook it that way. You're shooting
Right.
for 135 to 150. You're pushing that line, and everyone's cooking it to 165, 185, and it's like, it's a totally different experience if you cook it at the proper temperatures, and you're trying to season it with things that work well with duck, not with chicken.
Right. What do you think the hardest thing is that you have learned to cook, that that was the biggest challenge for you?
Biggest challenge for me really came down to the fact that I just needed the thermometer.
Right.
That to me is a big thing for wild game. You treated a lot of meat without a thermometer, like I said, like beef or like chicken, and you go in and it didn't taste right, and it didn't feel right. Textures are wrong. It's with all this wild game that doesn't have the fat content like store-bought pork or beef or anything else. It's a totally different texture, especially if it's cooked to the same levels or overcooked. It's not as forgiving. Buying a thermometer was actually a big portion of helping my meat out. For me, it was thinking that I could do anything without a thermometer. Now I'm trying to use tools that are there, and try new experiences. Last year was the first time I had ever heard of a reverse sear. And that was something, what's a reverse sear? Oh, well, you're taking, instead of, searing it in the cast iron and throw it in the oven, you start it in the oven and then pull it off, let it rest for 10 minutes and then sear it and it's ready to go. And it's such a simple thing, but when you don't know it, you wouldn't even think to do it.
Right.
And now, having done a reverse sear, it's one of my favorite methods for salmon. So you're crisping that skin as opposed to, searing it and then throwing it into the oven and it starts to get soggy. And, that, again, you want that crisp skin that's there. And when you're trying to chew through it, it's not a good experience.
Right. Let's dive back into a little bit of your childhood and how you got to this point in your life, and where you gained this passion to create Pusuit and begin the sharing. So you grew up you're born and raised in Seal Beach, California, and like you mentioned before, California is not a big hunter state, right? So being raised by a hunting father back then, was probably a little bit out of the norm, like you mentioned, but I'm sure your dad was surrounded by some great people that hunted, and he had his community of people and did his thing. And tell us about the experiences that you had growing up with your dad going into the wilderness.
Absolutely. So some of my first experiences, my dad was a member, I believe, of Wilderness Unlimited, and that's where he met a couple of his first hunting friends. And I remember going out, there's a place called Clark's Ranch, and that was my first, trip that I can remember with him, where I brought my cap gun, and this was before they had the orange tips on them, so I felt like I was legit. And we were just hiking along, and it was for a deer hunt. I don't even know if he got a deer. He may have, but that wasn't the memory that sticks. I just remember being out there with him and, enjoying being able to walk side by side with, a gun in hand, and feel like I was a hunter. I was one of the adults, who was treating me on the same level as he was. And that just went on.
How old were you at this point?
That probably was maybe 5 or 6 at the time. Wow.
Gotcha.
And so, I would go out, we have a cabin that is on a deer club that we would go to, and we would go out there, and I remember being told that at 2 weeks, my parents were already traveling with me, taking me places. I've got pictures that I have no memory of, with a deer hanging and, or a pig, in front of me and me holding my cap gun. I don't have any memory of it, but the pictures prove that it happened.
There you go. That's all you need. It was a little evidence, right?
That's it. And so seeing my dad and his passion, excited me, and it drove me to want to do the same. And it's a different experience when I see my dad, in real world versus in hunting world. In day-to-day life, he's dad, and that's, right. He's the parent. Here's the rules. Here's the law of the house. Don't backtalk your mother. Stay in line. You go out hunting with him, here 12, 13 years old, and now I'm a partner. We're working together. He's guiding me through things, but there's a friendship that's created out of it. There's a whole new bond that I felt with my parents and with my dad going out and hunting with him in the field than I did, sitting at home, just around the normal dinner table. Right. So for me, that was a big growth in my life, was hunting with him and having him guide me through, the process of going out in the field and harvesting your own food and, the steps it takes to be able to make that meat, ready for the table. And then my mom would take over, into the kitchen, and she would, show me what it took to be able to cook these things and be able to, make them taste good.
Right.
So,
well, and so you were doing that, and then you made it to around 10 or 11 years old, and then you got to go get your hunter safety, right? Because California is a 12-year-old state, right? You got to be 12.
Yeah, so you can get your hunting license at any age, but you're not able to do any big game until 12. So, yeah, my responsibility level, it was about 10, 11 years old that I got to go and get my hunting license. So,
Okay.
and that's, when he took me to take the test, it was probably, honestly, with my child brain, I don't even remember how long it was, a couple months. And then he took me out to a family friend's property. It was a grape vineyard up in Central California, and he had dove on the property. And I just remember that was, the first hunt that I got to go with, a real gun, hunting, as opposed to, just shooting at clay pigeons or anything like that, practicing. And, I took home one dove, and I was super stoked about having, one dove to bring home.
That's barely enough to feed just you.
No, not even close. That's it. So, but yeah, I mean, at that age, it was great to be able to get out there and, like I say, kind of feel like you're an equal, or you're standing on a different side with your parent, and now as a hunting partner, and as your hunting guide. And it wasn't until the next year that we got to start doing the deer hunting and the pig hunting, and because, like I said, at California, you're gonna be 12 to be able to do that. And so, being my birthday is in September, I had to wait until about 8 months later. So I hit 12, and I'm like, I still gotta wait. Okay, so. And another odd thing with our state is how early our deer seasons are in comparison to a lot of other states.
Right.
I hunt the coastal zone, and so the general season opens in, I believe, July, August, depending on what hunt you're doing, if you're doing archery versus the general rifle season. Right. And so it's being able to get out during the summertime when these animals are not rutting, and it's just a different experience, I think, in California, especially in Central California, when you don't get to hunt the rut. It's a lot of spot and stalk. It's a lot of, hiking and trying to find, a good vantage point. And you're out in the early morning, and then you go back for the midday and try and take a nap in between, and then go back out for the evening again. Right. So for me, it was one of those things of growing up with that. Trying to get out in the field and, hike, trying to keep up with my dad at that age. It was tough. He's definitely a hiker, and still is in comparison to me. He'll leave me in the dust every time. So it's just a great experience to be able to get out, with a parent, or grow up, obviously, in the hunting world, which I know a lot of people don't get to experience. And in that same sense, if I have the opportunity that someone shows an interest in hunting, I'm always open to the idea of having that conversation with them. And I want to be able to get them out there and experience it themselves, so they can feel what it's like to be able to partake in your actual harvesting of your own food, and, play that role of predator in the land.
Tell me about the time when you went hunting with your dad. You were 12 years old. You got your chance to go do your first deer hunt.
Yeah, so we went out to the backcountry. It was my dad and another hunting partner, Dave, and we're back out there. And Dave mentions, we should probably check over this hillside. And so we hike over, and it's totally unexpected on my part, being the kid. It's just another hike. We crest the top, and there's a big 4x4 buck down at the bottom. 4 does around him. Couldn't ask for better. Usually we don't have rutting going on, since it's such an early season out here. But since it was relatively last weekend, sometimes we'll see the start of the rut. So my dad gives me his gun. And it's a downhill shot, so I try and sit down, use the bipod on the gun. Well, when I go to sit down, the grass is taller than I am and taller than the gun, so I'm not going to be able to make the shot. So my dad says to pick up the gun. He's going to get down on all fours, and I'm going to shoot using the bipod off of his back so I can take the shot on this buck. So he gets himself all set up. I try and rest the gun on him, solid rest as a guy can be on all fours.
While he's breathing.
While he's breathing, while you got a 12-year-old with, his first buck fever. So I try and get this, deer in my sights, and I remember seeing it through the optic, not being able to think during that time frame of, aim small, miss small, try and make the shot count. It's in the sight, it's golden, take the shot. So I take the shot, and I just remember my eye coming off that scope so fast, I saw the dust fly of the round hitting behind him. So I did not stick to that gun like I'm supposed to, none of that stuff, totally missed right over the top of him, probably 6 feet high. So, here I'm thinking I missed. Well, this deer just looked right back up at us like, what's up that hill? I don't really care. I've got my does. I'm happy here. So instead of, grabbing the gun and reloading around, handing it back to me, my dad decides, oh, you know what? Nope. Grab the gun, reload around, buck's still there, takes the shot, and down it goes.
Oh, man, he stole your deer.
That's it. That's the biggest buck that I've seen taken out of there so far with me on the hunt. So it was still an awesome experience. I remember, even today, still thinking about that of just, wish I could have taken that shot, but at that age, I'm sure I would have missed again, and that deer probably would have been gone. So I was just excited really to be there and witness everything. And so the does watched this buck drop, and they just hung around. My dad unloaded the gun, and we start walking down there. The does all look up at us and finally, saunter off, since there's no doe season out in that zone ever. So we walk down there, deer's down right where it stood. And my dad starts to, show me how to field dress, my first deer. And so that was an experience in itself, learning all the parts of this animal and how you get in and you're trying to gut it and trying not to make a mess and, all this stuff on a hillside, not this, deer hanging, no, concrete down or anything, just out in the field, trying to lay it all out and not make a mess of this meat that you're trying to get to. Right. So it was just, it's a great experience that I can fondly remember, as even though it's not my first deer, it was my first deer, if that makes any sense.
So then how old were you when you finally got your chance to take your very own first deer?
13. So next year. Yeah. I had a fork that came out. I was in another part of the property that we hunt, and same thing, on a side of a hill, and I was able to make the shot and connect on it. It wasn't the best shot. It went through the back and it was quartering towards me, so it hit the back and went out the butt. Being a steep hill, it rolled all the way down to the bottom. The good thing was I was 13 and, I was still small, so my dad did most of the work for me. Right. I remember my sister was with me, and so we stayed in the Jeep and he hiked down the hill to get it. And I remember it feeling like ages. We're sitting in this Jeep and he hiked all the way down, and we're waiting. And, at that age, we're starting to, it's getting dark. It's starting to scare you a little bit. You're not really too certain what's going on. And so I start shouting down at him like, hey, come on back. We're, we'll do this later. We're not very comfortable up here, in, more childish terms. And he calls for me, and probably another 20 minutes later, saying, come down. And so I get about halfway down the hill and find him there. And he was trying to carry this buck up the hill on his own. And it was a larger bodied buck for a blacktail. So it was probably pushing 130, 140 pounds. Right. And so he tried to get it up there and decided to sit down to take a rest, and he couldn't get back up. And it was starting to slide back down the hill. So he needed me to come down and help him up so that way we can make it the rest of the way. So I went down there and tried to help him stand up, and we ended up just halving the deer at that point and taking half up and then going back for the other half and bringing that up. So wild experiences.
It's a lot of trial and error, isn't it? You know, trying to figure out what you're capable of and what you can accomplish. And, you know, and of course, you know, there's nothing better than having a dad that's willing to put forth the effort for you and help you out and teach you and carry you through the steps of learning all that you need to learn, you know?
Absolutely.
That's awesome. Now, I mean, obviously you do a ton of pig hunting too. I mean, I can't wait to get to California to try to do some pig hunting. That's something that I really want to do. And
it's a totally different experience from deer hunting for sure. Just the attitude is totally different. You know, even you know, the guys you're hanging out with, it's no longer this, shh, be quiet. We don't want to, make a noise. We want everything to be, you can have the camaraderie, you can joke around, you can, go over the next hill and you'll see a group down there. So it's definitely a totally different experience from deer hunting. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having that opportunity. And, and a lot of people say, man, that the pigs out in California are tasty treats. So
they are, definitely. And that's the thing. There's people that I hunt with that do not hunt pigs on the same property, and they'll leave them and say, hey, we're not hunting these guys. We're not taking that shot. They're deer hunters only, and they think that the meat doesn't taste good. And it's one of those things for me. It's like I have not had that experience. It's all on how you prepare it, and if you want to take the time to do it.
Right. Well, and I think, like you say, it's all on how you treat that meat from the very beginning, from the minute it's shot to the minute it gets to the plate. Right. The meat deserves a certain level of respect, and that also helps create, a better tasting product in the end. For me, butchering my own meat has always been a big part of that, because I can control how much silver I got in it, how much sinew, how much fat, all the stuff, right? So, which I think lends to how the meat tastes by how much byproduct you leave on it. And so for me, I always go as clean as I can, because I think that gives me the best chance for preparing it the best way I can, and it coming across to the plate as being a tasty thing to eat, right?
Absolutely.
So, you obviously hunted a long time by yourself too. It sounds like through college before you finally met your hunting partner. And I've had a friend of mine who told me that finding a good hunting partner is harder than finding your soulmate. So.
Yeah, considering I found my soulmate, in high school, and I didn't find my hunting partner until I was 26. I can kind of agree with that in a sense. So, yeah, again, being in Southern California and everything being hush hush, I didn't really meet anybody that was, into hunting or anything like that. Like I said, until I was 26, and it was actually a friend of mine's brother that I, was aware of and knew, that had just mentioned when I was over at their house one time that he's interested in, maybe trying out hunting, and, his dad had done it in the past, and, he wanted to be able to do it. And that's, being that was a passion that I've had since I was a kid, and I didn't get to, talk about it. I was all too ready to be able to jump on the opportunity to be able to take somebody into the field with me that, wasn't a parent and wasn't somebody that, a family member that, was doing it all their life and knew, everything about it.
So Sean comes into your life at 26 with all this passion and all this energy and desire. And then you guys hit the woods, man. You hit it hard, and it was pretty cool, because it sounds to me like in your story that you told me before that your experiences and his experiences came together to make a great duo, because you guys, each were able to teach each other something, right?
Absolutely, and that's the thing. I'm going into the field with a new hunter that has no boundaries. It doesn't have any concept of what you should do, what you shouldn't do with your meat, or what you should do with a harvest, or being able to go out in the field with somebody new brought a lot to the plate for me. Here I'm trying to teach him, how to be quiet in the woods, how to, make sure that you're carrying your gun proper so you're not, endangering anybody else, or, just general, hunting knowledge. And here he's coming at hunting from a totally different approach. Hey, there's, jackrabbits over here. They're open all year. Let's go get them. Well, I was always told, growing up, jackrabbits there's nothing to eat that's good on them. They don't taste good. Same thing with, coots. You don't eat coots, and here he's coming at it from a totally fresh vantage point that doesn't have those stigmas attached to it. And this is his first experience, and he wants to be able to, try something new. So here we go out to the backcountry, and he's, let's go get some jackrabbits. All right, you're new hunter. You want to be able to shoot stuff and have a good time, and we'll do that. But it's one of those things of you eat what you kill, so it's going to be an experience. And I was pleasantly surprised. He took it home. He made some andouille sausage out of it, and it was phenomenal. Awesome. And that opened my whole perspective on, what can you hunt? What can you take home? What stuff is considered, bad to some hunters when it's really not. I've made a coot chowder. And it was good. I enjoyed it. And so this idea of, putting down people for going and harvesting jackrabbits or coots or anything like that, that stigma was completely broken for me by going into the field with Sean.
What's a coot?
A coot, a mud hen, those little black ducks, if you want to call them that. So okay. It's in the waterfowl world, they're the trash bird. And so there's hundreds of them on the water. And anytime you see like a spreadsheet for the wilderness areas, when you go duck hunting, people will look at all the different types of ducks and say, hey, mallards were taken, widgeon were taken, all these good tasting ducks were taken. And then you look at the coot category and it's either 0 or, 100. And you're like, somebody went out there and just decided to blast a bunch, But it's very rare for somebody, especially in this area of the country, to take it home. So in that sense, it was something where it's like, well, if you want to shoot it, we'll try it. We'll try and find a way to make this taste good. And so for me, it was the same experience where it's like, you know what? I've never tried coot. I was told that it's not good. Let's try it. We'll try and find a way to make this taste good.
Sweet. And so all that being said, you and Sean ended up being connected on a hunt with Jeremiah, aka From Field to Plate, and I follow him, and he does really great works teaching people how to do the simplest things. Well, I shouldn't say simplest, right? It's simple for me and you, but things and how to do exactly what Post Pusuit is a website built to show people. And tell me about getting to meet Jeremiah for the first time.
Yeah, Sean was in a band, and it was a friend of a friend that knew Jeremiah, and so they connected on Facebook. And then one day I saw a post as I was scrolling through there, and it had just said that, from Jeremiah, that he was going to a wildlife area that Sean and I had just gone to, and he was going for his first duck hunt in that location. And Sean had mentioned, hey, we were just there, here's how we did. And so I jumped in the conversation and just saying, hey, we'd be happy to, give you what information we have since we were just there. And he got back with us and just said, hey, why don't you join me on the hunt then? And we'll just go down there together. And so, we were all too happy to be able to get out on another hunt. So we joined him, and got out there, and, we just hit it off. We all, have a very similar outlook on, using what you harvest and thinking beyond just the shot itself, and coming at hunting from a food perspective as well that I didn't see from other people. And so it was nice to be able to connect with somebody that had a very similar ideology about, taking your food to the next level and trying something new and being inventive and creative.
Right.
So,
and he surely is, isn't he? I mean, you guys
absolutely.
are like two peas in a pod, I'm sure.
Yeah, we talk a lot, and so I definitely bounce ideas off of him on things, and it's been nice to be able to have somebody that's similarly minded and is working on projects that are in your wheelhouse, and you enjoy doing it, and it's always fun to be able to jump on, and it's been rather entertaining. There's been times that he and we haven't even talked about it, but our mindsets are the same, and I'll be going through and deciding I'm gonna post a picture of a recipe I'm gonna do, and I'm working on this recipe, and then a week before I do it, pop, here comes one from him, and it's like, that's the same dish. Like, how did you have the same idea that I did and get to post it a week before me? All right, scratch that one. I'm going to just let that one sit for 6 months and I'll come back.
Right. Well, I mean, great minds think alike, right? And
absolutely,
that's what's happening there. It's interesting to see your passion and how it's portrayed through your post Pusuit. You got a great gig going there. It's really cool to see the recipes you're putting up there and the things about you. And I'm going to be watching it to see as you add more content and more videos and more recipes and more, more of everything. It's going to be exciting to see how that comes along. And, but tell me about your first passion in your life. I mean, we've talked a lot about your second passion. Tell me a little bit about your first passion in your life.
Well, my wife I actually met in high school. We were 15, and she was the one and only for me. And even at a young age, growing up in the Disney world, you always think about, you just want to find that one and, be done. And that's, and I was fortunate enough to, have that work out in my life. I met Erica, like I said, in high school, and she was, in another group of friends, and just happened to leave that group and see somebody in my group of friends that she knew, and we ended up meeting through that group of friends, and we just hit it off. And I was 15 at the time, and just looking forward to being able to pursue that life of I'm going to try and this is a girl I'm attracted to, I'm interested in, I want to be able to pursue her as well. And I was just fortunate enough that she was willing to put up with me and put up with my high school side of me.
Well, I'm looking I've looked through some of your Instagram. You tagged me in some pictures, and the picture of your son duck hunting with you with his cap gun and the smile on his face, man. I mean, you crushed it on that one. I mean, that looks like a memory that will last for forever.
I hope it does for him. It absolutely will for me. That was very exciting for me. Just this last month or 2 months ago or so, we got my son up there to do his first duck hunt with me. And, he's got his little side-by-side, which for me, when I was growing up, my dad had a side-by-side on the wall. Never took it out. It was just there. And I always viewed that as the daddy gun. And so for me, when I found out that my wife's pregnant with our first son, I told her, okay, I need my own daddy gun. I need my own side-by-side. I want to be able to do that, and so, we were able to do that, and I got my own side-by-side. And I remember even as a kid finding the side-by-side that my son now has on Cabela's, and it was always it was expensive, $60, $70, something like that for it. And I was just like, I'm not going to spend $60 on a toy shotgun when I would save it for a real one when I'm older,
Right.
And one day it was on sale. And so he was 1 year old, and I go, yep, I'm buying that. And when he's old enough, he's going to carry that in the field. And that way he can carry, a side-by-side that's like daddy's gun. And so, being able to take him out on his first duck hunt and have him have that practice gun, with me in the field, and it was just awesome to be able to experience that and kind of come full circle from being the kid, being guided out with my dad, to being able to be the dad and play that same role in my child's life and pass that forward for him and pass my, love and respect for nature and wildlife and all of that forward. It's been absolutely thrilling to watching him.
It's such a good feeling, isn't it?
Absolutely.
There's no prouder daddy moment ever, in my opinion, when they start getting there. And it gets even better as he gets older, and he'll get to start doing the things just like your dad taught you, and get you in your, harness safety and get all that. And that's a cool step. And, getting some small game and then moving to the big game. And it's just amazing. It's amazing.
I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely.
So you had mentioned that your wife is finishing stuff on her career, and then you're going to be becoming, what do they call it, Mr. Dad, Mr. Mom, Mr. Mom, right?
That's it. Yeah. Well, in a few months here, she's going to be finishing up her residency, and so we're going to be, moving forward in that part of our life. Finally, trying to get to the wilderness. We've always lived in SoCal. We thought we were going to stay in SoCal and that was going to be our life. But when the opportunity presented itself to be able to move out, we took it. And so, yeah, we're going to be moving out to Central California. We have some family up there as well. And so I'm going to be potentially leaving here and starting that life, and looking forward to it, getting my kids in school out there, since my eldest is going to be starting kindergarten. And so I'm going to try and, play a role in his school life as well. And, make sure that he's getting, educated, not only in the classroom, but I'm able to kind of oversee that at home and, play a role in that if I can get, involved in the PTA and all that kind of stuff. I hope to, I'd like to be able to do that as well.
Well, you're very connected to what you need to be doing, that's for sure. And then I think that it's also going to allow you some time to really work on post Pusuit, right?
That's the goal. Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping with the website and, Instagram and all that. And I want to be able to pursue, the hunting side for me, and see if there's anything, there that I can push for. As a kid growing up, I always wanted to be a hunting guide. And so that was a goal, when I was a kid. And I kind of, as I grew up, that got pushed over because it's, there's no money in it. You should go do this instead. You should do that instead. Okay. All right. And, push it aside. So now at this point, it's like, well, that might be a possibility. I'll be in the area that I want to be in. There's going to be country that I can hunt. And, there's an opportunity there to be able to push the idea of, the hunting side, the social media side, both with Instagram and with post Pusuit. And then, if there's any opportunity to be able to, reach for that guiding possibility as well, I'm absolutely going to look into it. So
anything's possible. On your post Pusuit, you've got these awesome projects that you're doing, these wild game projects. And I want to encourage people to go check that out, because we mentioned earlier, you got this really cool bow tie that you made out of mallard feathers that is really cool. The tie flying you've done. The Christmas ornaments with the feathers and the glass bulbs are super pretty, man. And just all the different things and how you've collected the feathers and everything, and how you're saving those and making uses of those. And you click on these and they're super, they got a ton of explanation in all of what you're doing. And it's really neat. And I encourage people to go check it out. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of those, because a lot of that stuff, it's like people say they do it, but they're not showing you how to do it. They're not showing you what's up,
Well, and that's the thing, like I said before, I find a lot of people, they want to use the meat, and that's fantastic. And I, appreciate that side of it all, and I was 100% there myself, but there's a lot of other things that, are possible with your harvest that are the inedible side, or the stuff that you may not find as edible, using bones for stock, using, your feathers for, like I said, different ornaments or different little projects, using hides and furs. I have like a rabbit hide right now now that I'm saving that I'm going to try and, build a little miniature walking stick for my son. It's just, trying to think beyond just the hunt side of it and the meat side of it, and find these uses for things that people aren't necessarily saving, so they can look at it and say, hey, there is something I can do with this. I can use this,
Right.
And like the bow tie is one of my favorite things so far that I've made.
It's cool, man.
It's just, it's a way to integrate hunting into, potentially daily life, or if I'm going to some kind of event, I would never wear a bow tie normally, but because it's a bow tie from a duck that I took, I'm wearing that at any chance I can get it. I'll wear it,
Yeah.
And it just to be able to, I brought that for Christmas Eve, and we celebrate Christmas Eve on both sides of the family, and we have large family, so I spend half the Christmas Eve at one side and half with the other. And just being able to, wear my bow tie there and talk with all the family, and they're like, oh, that's a cool bow tie. Where'd you get it? It's like, oh, there's a story attached to that. I've got that hunt. Yeah.
That's super cool. I scrolled through your website earlier. I got to ask you, who taught you how to use a camera?
Nobody.
Because your pictures of your food plates and the stuff that you've done are awesome.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. It's something that I think anybody that spends enough time doing something is going to hopefully pick up a few things to be able to make things look good. And, I wouldn't ever call myself an expert, just like I'm not a chef until I go and spend the time cooking with chefs and cooking beside them and getting their knowledge. In the same sense, I'm not a photographer. 99% of the photos you see on my website are done on my phone.
Wow.
So those photos, I spend the time, and I got to know my phone well. And unfortunately, I've had to go through 3 phones because of my hunting with my phone in the field with me. So that's been an expensive venture. I guess it's better than losing a camera.
Yeah.
But
maybe.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's why I had to, after the second phone, I had to pick up insurance because it was just getting too expensive to be dropping my phones into the water. So I need a waterproof phone or something.
Right. You need to, I don't think there's really such thing. There's a water resistant phone, right? But that doesn't mean it doesn't work in the duck blind in the water, does it?
No, not in that water, especially.
I tell you a funny story. One time I dropped a phone. Well, the wind blew my towel over, and my phone was on my towel into the hot tub, and the bubbles were going and everything, and I couldn't find it. I was looking around, and then finally I'm like, oh yeah, turn the bubbles off, turn the jets off, right? So I turn all that off, and I'm looking around, I don't see it, and then suddenly it lit up. And I see it, I grab it, I open the phone, or no, it was like a flat Nokia, and I pounded the water out of the microphone and stuff, and I hit the button, and I answered it, and my wife was on the other line, and she's like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, seriously? This thing is working?
I wish I had that luck.
Well, I'll tell you what, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your passion with us. I encourage all our listeners to go check out the postpusuit.com. You won't, it's amazing. His pictures, his recipes, his projects he's doing, everything he's got going on. You just can't get enough of it. He's got a great blog that's happening. Get in there, go check it out. And there is something for everybody to learn on this site. I don't care if you think you're the best chef or you're Mr. Project Maker. He's got it going on. So I can't thank you enough for being on. Thanks so much, Reed.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I look forward to connecting with you again soon, and I'll stay looking at your site, and I am going to cook up some of your recipes because I'm super stoked. I mean, if I got it, I was a chef for 15 years, and I can build some nice plates, and I can do some things, but I am super, super highly impressed with your pictures and your plate presentations and every detail that you go through on everything you're doing is well thought out. And so good job.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, good job. It's really sweet. And so where can people find you?
So primarily I'm on Instagram, is at RS Outdoors, or my website, www.postpursuit.com.
Right.
I do have a fresh Facebook as well for Post Pursuit, so I can be found on there as well. So, but that one's just starting out, and hopefully I'm going to be able to keep my recipes going and push forward with all my projects, and I'm looking forward to pushing forward on this.
Well, and people can also follow Sean a little bit, right? He's on Instagram at Western Woodsman. And then, of course, don't leave out Jeremiah from Field to Plate. And if you guys cook any of these recipes or make any of these projects, be sure and tag Post Pursuit and Reed so he can check out what you're doing and all the cool stuff. And if there's any ideas you may have, maybe throw them at Reed. I'm sure he'd be happy to see what you're doing and see what you got going on and share what you're doing, because the movement of realizing how precious of a resource we have and utilizing as much of it as we can surely is an easy way to justify why we hunt. But there's so much more wrapped up in it, right? And I'm sure that through Post Pursuit, you'll continue to show your passion through there, and we look forward to seeing it.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Go check out this young man. He's got some cool stuff happening. And we really appreciate the reviews and the emails. I got a great email today. It just fills my heart to see that you guys you're listening, you're tuning in, you're subscribing, and that you're enjoying what we're doing. So thanks so much for being a listener, a subscriber, and someone who gives me good reviews or bad reviews. I don't mind. Go to wildernessattitude.com and check out what we got going on there as well. You can go to our YouTube page. We've got a lot of good stuff happening there. And I'll also be throwing up some new content on YouTube and some short videos on some things that we're getting ready to build. And the secret on that is I'm going to finally build my archery room and shop. And we're also going to be building our Train to Hunt course in the neighborhood. So show you how to utilize your neighborhood for doing a Train to Hunt event. So we'll talk to you soon. Reed, thank you so much. And for our listeners, we'll catch you next week. Thanks.